They say the Kroll bloodline died quiet, a whimper under pine needles, a name swallowed by fog. But the town of Silver Pines never forgets, not really. It lets the rot run deep, sure, but it remembers every root, especially the ones that still twitch. Esther Kroll hadn't planned to return, but when the last of the family's legal papers came through, an inheritance wrapped in wax and dread, she didn't fight it. Maybe it was obligation, maybe guilt, maybe the forest had already started calling her back. The house stood where it always had, at the far end of Weeping Hollow Road, a dead end of drooping pine branches, damp gravel, and memories sealed in bark. She hadn't been here since she was 17. The year her parents vanished in the woods, the year the last howl shook the town. Esther stepped from the rental car just before dusk. Boot soles crunching against gravel that felt too soft, like it hadn't dried in years. Fog slithered across the ground, curling around the porch steps like fingers. The house didn't look abandoned. No, abandoned would have been kinder. This place looked ashamed. The windows, streaked in grime, stared at her like unblinking eyes. Shutters flapped in a wind that hadn't existed moments before. The porch groaned when she stepped onto Ita's. If the wood remembered her weight, she unlocked the front door with the old brass key the lawyer had given her. The one tied with twine and a note that read, "For the keeper." It didn't make sense at the time, but that phrase would haunt her before the week was out. Inside, the air was thick, musty, yes, but also wet, like the walls had been weeping. A layer of dust blanketed everything except the fireplace. The hearth was blackened. Ash, still recent. Someone or something had been there. Esther's skin prickled. Not from cold, from memory. The family home hadn't just belonged to her parents, it had belonged to the line. A bloodline whispered about in town circles. The Krolls weren't just old money, they were old magic. At least, that's what the stories claimed. And that night, as the last of the sunlight dipped below the pine line, Esther found it. The grimoire. She didn't find it so much as it revealed itself. One moment, she was brushing dust off the mantle. The next, it was just there, resting atop the shelf. Bound in pale, cracked leather, faint ridges ran along its spine, not decorative, not ornamental, claw marks. The moment her fingers touched it, the temperature dropped. The book groaned as it opened. An odd creaked, groaned. Inside, no names, no dates, only sigils, wolves, moons, chains, broken branches, each one marked a generation, until the very bottom, where one branch had no mark at all, just a blank space, a waiting place. And as she traced her finger across the page, something moved. A sound upstairs, a step. Not the shifting of an old house, no. A footstep, heavy, deliberate. She turned, listened. The creaking above her head stopped. But the hallway mirror on the wall beside her had fogged over, a wet, wide smear across the center, and 3 long vertical streaks running through it, claw marks. She was not alone in the house. And then she heard it, low, whispered a voice with no breath. "Mother." Esther froze. The word didn't come from outside, it came from within, like it had been waiting beneath her ribs this whole time, just waiting for the right page to be opened. She backed away. The grimoire clutched tight. Outside, the wind picked up, and through the trees, from somewhere deeper in the woods, a howl, not quite animal, not quite child, but close enough to both to freeze her blood. The Whitefang child had returned, and it remembered her. Who or what is the Whitefang child? And why does it call Esther mother? If you've ever felt something scratching at your memory, like this story, so it can haunt someone else too. Silver Pines doesn't do reunions, not the kind that come with closure, only the kind that come with old wounds, half-healed and festering. It was early morning when the truck rolled in, old, rust-rusted, and gasping up the gravel drive like it hated every rotation of its wheels. The fog hadn't lifted. The pine trees still leaned in close like they were listening. Esther stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, heart in her throat. Micah Elrow, same truck, same eyes, but not the same boy she'd climbed trees with. Not the same boy who left that night without a word. He got out slow, like the weight of the forest had settled into his joints, hair longer, eyes darker. A man dragged back to a grave he helped dig. They didn't speak right away. Sometimes silence is safer. Micah walked up the steps and stopped, just shy of the threshold. "It called me back," he said. "Finally." His voice was gravel-soaked in regret, like it called you. Esther didn't answer. She didn't need to. The fact that they were both standing here said enough. Inside, the house hadn't changed, but it felt different. The grimoire lay closed on the table. But Esther swore she heard it breathing. Micah's eyes flicked to it. He didn't touch it. Just looked at it the way a man might look at an unmarked grave, like he knew what was under it, and wished he didn't. "I saw the child last night," Esther said. Micah tensed. "It spoke to me." He flinched harder at that than at anything else. "It never spoke before," he said. "It called me mother." That broke him. He turned away, ran a hand over his face, and whispered something under his breath. It took her a moment to hear it. Then it's starting again. Esther stepped forward. "What is—" Micah looked at her, and the man who used to throw pine cones at her from the treetops was gone. In his place was someone marked. Marked in ways the body didn't always show, but hers did. "You're hiding something," she said. He didn't argue. Instead, he rolled up his sleeve. 3 claw marks ran across his forearm, raised and silvered over, not healing, not scarring, glowing. "I got too close to the mural last time," he said. It didn't like that. Before she could respond, the lights flickered, and upstairs footsteps again. Faster pacing, Micah grabbed a crowbar. From the umbrella stand, instinct, familiar, like he'd expected this. "It moves when the book opens," he said. "You've seen it too." "I let it out, Esther." The silence that followed was suffocating. Esther gripped the table. The air smelled like copper, no oftent, but rising. Micah walked to the fireplace and pulled something from behind a loose brick. A photograph, water-stained and torn. It showed the old family mural. But in the corner half, blurred, stood a child. Not her, not him, something. In between, golden eyes, and a mouth too wide to be human. "This is from the night it all went wrong," he said. "Before the pact was broken, she took the photo. The edges were frayed, but the energy coming off it was sharp. Judah, the Whitefang child, born of a ritual, a covenant, supposed to unite the bloodlines. Instead, he was buried, forgotten, and now he was walking the halls again." Later that night, the two sat in silence. The fire crackled. The wind outside moaned against the shutters. The grimoire reopened on its own to a page neither remembered seeing. Blood answers blood, a keeper awakens the marked, and the marked awaken the pack. Then 3 knocks, not on the door. From inside the attic, Micah rose. Esther grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said. He nodded. But the attic door creaked open anyway, by itself, and at the top of the stairs, a small handprint, bloody, fresh, 3 long fingers claw-tipped, pressed into the wall like a signature. What is the Whitefang child trying to awaken, and what does it want with Esther's blood? Would you forgive a friend who vanished with blood on his hands, or would you ask what he buried out there in the trees? Transformation doesn't always begin with teeth. Sometimes, it starts with memory. With the shape of a scream you never let out. With the realization that the thing you feared most didn't hunt you, it waited for you to come home. That night, Esther dreamed in impossible detail. She stood in a corridor of trees, naked, mud-slicked, eyes silvered like a coin in water. Wind choked the branches above her, and from the roots below, something pulsed like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Ahead of her, a figure, child-sized, back-turned. Judah, the Whitefang child. She reached out, called his name, though she didn't remember learning it. Her voice sounded strange in the dream, like it came through teeth that weren't hers. The child turned. Its face wasn't a child's, not anymore, not entirely. The skin around the eyes was stretched, the irises pure gold, the mouth too wide, the jaw cracked slightly when it moved. And when it spoke, she didn't hear it in the dream, she heard it in her body. Bleed without hate. Esther woke up gasping. The sheets were soaked, her arms burned. She turned on the lamp and stopped breathing. 3 claw marks had appeared across her left shoulder, not scratches, raised, like welts or scars, but they hadn't been there yesterday. Micah stood in the doorway. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. "It's starting," he said. Downstairs, the house felt alive, not metaphorically. The walls pulsed faintly, like something behind them was breathing through drywall. The chandelier above the dining room table swayed, though the air was still. The grimoire was open again, pages turning on their own, faster, faster, then stopping. The mural in the living room, a painted family tree, with wolves at every root now, had one new addition. A faint outline of a cub, small, lanky, its paw reaching upward. The ink was wet. Judah's mark had appeared, and beside it, a blank one, unformed, waiting. Esther ran to the sink, splashed water on her face, tried to breathe. When she looked up, the mirror didn't show her reflection. It showed Judah's. He stood behind her, not moving, not smiling, just watching. "Then, Mother," he whispered, but this time, not with malice, with need. Later, Micah confessed everything. The night the pact was broken, the night they sealed Judah beneath the floorboards of the family crypt. They were children, but they were told it was mercy. Judah wasn't born of sin, they said. He was born of intention, a binding between Kroll blood and lycanthrope lineage meant to end centuries of silent war. He was supposed to unite two worlds, but something in the spell failed. He grew too fast, shifted too soon, and one night, he bit a priest's hand off in the middle of a blessing. After that, the family panicked. They bound him in moon-forged chains, buried him beneath the mural, and rewrote the records. Judah became a secret, a forgotten scar, and now, Micah said, he wants a keeper. Esther looked down at her hands. One of her nails was splitting thicker now, sharpened, like a claw. Her voice cracked. "Am I becoming him?" Micah shook his head. "No, you're becoming you, but the part of you they tried to bury." The transformation accelerated. By the next evening, Esther couldn't stand the sound of silverware scraping plates. Her hearing had sharpened. Her sense of smell overwhelmed her with the scent of pine needles. Mildew and Micah's fear, not sweat fear. Judah appeared more often, in the hallway, at the base of the stairs, sometimes inside her dreams, sometimes inside her bones. He never spoke again, but he left messages, scratches on the walls, symbols, insult. One phrase etched into the condensation on her window: "Only the marked can break the bond, or pass it on." Esther realized the truth then. Judah didn't want revenge, he wanted release. The pact had chained him to the bloodline. He couldn't die, he couldn't change, not fully, not until someone took his place. The final straw came on the third night. Esther walked into the grimoire room and found it torn apart, every page ripped from its spine, floating midair, spinning in a slow circle. And in the center of the spiral, Micah, eyes wide, mouth open, frozen in place. The pages spun faster, his skin began to blister. Esther screamed, rushed in, and just before she touched him, everything stopped. The pages dropped. Micah fell to the floor, gasping. "He doesn't want me," he said, "he wants you." Esther sat on the floor beside him, shaking, and from the hallway, Judah watched and smiled. Will Esther accept the role of pact keeper or become the final offering in a bloodline already soaked in betrayal? Some secrets can't stay buried. Share this tale before someone else opens the wrong door. The blood moon doesn't rise, it emerges, slow and sentient, peeling itself from behind the clouds, like something ashamed to be seen. It was on a night like that long ago that the curse began, and it was on this night that Esther remembered it all. The grimoire had gone dead, its pages brittle, its ink faded. But Esther didn't need it anymore. The memory had taken hold, not hers, her grandmother's, her great-grandfather's. A chain of recollection passed down, not through story, but through blood. The moment the moon reached its apex, the vision began. She wasn't in the house anymore. She was in the past, 1897. Silver Pines. The Kroll estate was new then, bright, built from clean wood and dirty promises. Inside the parlor, 5 figures in long coats formed a circle around a child. Judah, naked, pale, shivering. He was 6 years old. But his eyes had already seen war. Not the kind fought with blades, the kind fought in shadows, between species, beneath the full moon. This was no ordinary boy. He was born of pact-bound, conceived during a rare celestial alignment, meant to bind the Krolls and the Whitefang pack for eternity. He wasn't their heir, he was their solution, but love was the cost. and no one loved him. When the child shifted early howling at age 3, walking on claws by 5, they panicked. When he tore the family dog apart in the garden, they whispered exorcism. When he begged to be forgiven for things he didn't understand, they built a prison beneath the mural. The pact was broken, and Judah was buried alive beneath his own name. Esther gasped, staggering backward from the memory. The vision cracked like a film reel burning in a projector. Micah caught her before she hit the ground. "You saw it?" he asked. She nodded. "He wasn't the curse," she whispered. "He was the covenant." Micah swallowed hard, looked at the mural, at the unmarked branch, still glowing faintly silver. "Then we're the ones who broke it," he said. "Not him." Outside, the trees bent deeper, wind howling through them like wolves mourning something long buried. The fog returned, thicker now, red-tinted from the moon, and within it shapes. Not quite men, not quite beasts, the others, failed heirs, forgotten experiments. Half-born werecub children, sealed in graves with no stones. The woods were opening, calling. Esther grabbed the photo Micah had shown her days ago, the one of the mural, with the faint ghostly child in the corner. Judah, before his name was erased, behind him, in that photo. Second shape now flickered into visibility. A woman, eyes like frost, claws like ivory, smiling like hunger. "The stray," Micah muttered. Esther felt her body go cold. "Who is she?" Micah stepped away, toward the door. "She's the other half of the bond. The one who refused it, who ran wild when Judah was sealed. The first to flee the pack, before the pact was finished." The wind howled louder now, from every direction, and above it, a second sound breathing, not one set of lungs, many. Esther rushed to the fireplace and flipped through the remains of the grimoire. A single page still held its ink. To remake the pact, the marked must choose. Bind with the lost, or be hunted by them. The child remembers, but the forest remembers more. She looked at Micah. He was shaking, and from his back under, his shirt lines of raised flesh began to move. Not claws, roots. Judah's mark was crawling up his spine. Esther collapsed to her knees. The moonlight poured in through the window. Judah appeared again, closer now, older, taller, no longer a child. He stepped into the room, barefoot, eyes wide, and knelt beside her. "You can end this," he said, not aloud, but inside her mind, "or you can become it." Esther's fingers trembled. She reached toward the mural, and placed her palm on the blank branch, and it burned. Esther's palm pressed against the glowing mural as her veins illuminate with silver. Behind her, Micah screams. Outside, the woods howl, the stray's reflection flickers in the window glass. Claws raised, smile widening. What happens when the forgotten pact is remembered, and who must bleed to seal it again? Could you live with a betrayal that saved lives, or would the guilt turn you feral? Drop your answer, the trees are listening. It started with the wind, a sharp shift in the pressure. The kind of cold that cuts before it arrives. Silver Pines was changing. Not just the house, not just the mural, the whole town. And the woods weren't howling anymore. They were humming, low. Hungry, ancient. Micah hadn't spoken in hours. He sat in the parlor, rocking slightly, eyes unfocused. Lips cracked, his skin was losing its color, becoming grayish, sallow. Veins stood out along his neck like black branches. The mark was consuming him, and still, he didn't beg, didn't resist, only watched the door. As if something just outside it had promised him something sweeter than forgiveness. Esther stood nearby, hand against the mural. It had gone warm, not surface warm, deep, warm, like something was breathing behind it, and the tree at its center. Its roots had started to bleed again, slow, viscous drops running into the wood floor, vanishing like they'd been swallowed. She pressed her ear to the wall. She heard chanting, childlike, a nursery rhyme, in a language she didn't know, but still understood. 1 for the bone, 2 for the blood, 3 for the howl that drowns the flood, and then 3 knocks, slow, measured, not on the front door, on the attic trapdoor. Micah rose, staggering like a man pulled by strings. Esther blocked his path. You open that, and there's no coming back. Micah laughed, not a joyful sound, a broken sound. I already didn't come back, Esther, not really. That thing in the woods, the stray, she's been in my dreams. She promised peace. Esther's voice cracked. She's not peace, Micah. She's what's left when the pact fails. She's vengeance without a cause. Micah looked at Horelli, and for a moment, she saw the boy she used to chase through pine branches. Then he was gone again. He shoved past her, climbed the stairs. Esther followed too late. By the time she reached the attic, the trapdoor hung open. Wind screamed through it, like lungs exhaling centuries of dust. Inside, the light from her lantern flickered violently. Micah stood in the center of the room, and across from him the stray. She was taller than Esther expected, pale hair like rotted moonlight, claws long and clicking as she moved. Her eyes were soft, her smile neat-wide. She looked like someone who'd never stopped being hungry. He called. The stray whispered. So I answered. Micah dropped to his knees. Esther shouted, screamed, but the attic walls muted her voice. The house had chosen its volume. The stray placed a single clawed finger to Micah's forehead. And then she entered him. Not physically, not fully, but the moment her claw touched skin, his body jerked, convulsed, his scream split through plaster. And when he stood again, he was not Micah, not anymore. Micah, silhouetted by attic moonlight, eyes glowing dull silver. Esther stands at the bottom of the ladder, trembling, whispering his name. The stray's face appears behind him in the shadows, smiling wider than human anatomy should allow. Esther fled, down the stairs, into the rain. Into the woods that should have been her grave. Judah followed her, not walking. Gliding, like mist in child form. He's chosen her, the boy whispered. So now, you must choose me. Esther fell to her knees in the clearing behind the house. Mud soaked her palms, her heart thundered in her ears. Behind her, the stray's laughter echoed not loud, but close. She turned just in time to see Micah what was left of him leap from the attic window in a flash of claws and bone. He landed on all fours, snarling, transforming. Esther made her choice. She stood, faced the creature that had once been her friend. Judah took her hand. No warmth, just weight, and together, they began to howl. Not a sound of rage, a calling, and from deep within the earth, the mural pulsed. A sigil lit up, binding, sealing, choosing. Micah lunged, and Judah met him in midair. The boy was no longer a boy. He'd grown mid-lep, fur surging, claws sharpened. Two legacies collided in the mud and firelight. One born of pact, one born of rage, and somewhere in the distance, the mural split open, a new branch bloomed. Esther's. When it ended, the clearing was still. Micah lay unconscious, the stray had vanished. Judah knelt beside Esther, his eyes soft. He whispered, one chose peace, one chose pain. Now only you can seal the chain. Can Esther complete the bond, or will the curse evolve into something even worse? Still with me? Then you've heard the howl too. Subscribe before the next full moon finds you. By the time the moon reached its highest arc, everything in Silver Pines had stopped pretending. No more whispers behind walls. No more dreams mistaken for prophecy. Just the truth, clawed raw and left bleeding under moonlight. Esther stood at the edge of the woods, barefoot arms streaked with mud and blood. The wind had calmed, but the trees still leaned in, listening. Judah knelt beside her, silent, his wolf form reduced again, lanky, adolescent. Caught between boy and beast, he looked older now, like the forest had fed him years while the world slept. And behind them, the house burned, slowly, not from flame, but from within. The mural cracked straight down the center, the sigils bled white-hot lines of fire. The bond between worlds, between bloodlines, was fraying, because the pact had not been kept, not yet. Esther knew what needed to be done, she could feel it in her ribs. The grimoire had shown her one last page before turning to ash. A passage that wasn't written, but carved into the hide of the final leaf. When the keeper cannot hold, the pact must pass, bone to claw, flesh to howl. One must stay for the other to be freed. It wasn't a death sentence, it was a trade. The stray had returned, visible now only in reflection. In the corner of a shattered mirror propped against a pine tree, her mouth moved even when her body did not. You want to end this? She asked. Then become what they feared you'd be. Micah stirred near the tree line. Still breathing, still not whole, his transformation had slowed, arrested. Judah had stopped it, but not reversed it. Something in Micah had latched onto the stray and didn't want to let go. Esther approached him. He looked up, eyes flickering between man and beast. "You should kill me," he said. "That's not the pact," she answered. The clearing pulsed. The mural's roots were spreading through the ground, no veins of light cracking through soil, forming an ancient glyph beneath her bare feet. Esther took her place at the center. Judah stepped beside her. "What happens now?" she whispered. He tilted his head. "You keep the pact, or you give it away." She didn't understand, not fully. Until the stray reappeared, this time, not in shadow, in flesh. She stepped into the clearing, barefoot, arms extended, and knelt beside Judah, and then she smiled, wide, peaceful. "Honest, I remember," she said. "I was the first to break it. I ran because I couldn't love what they gave us. But you were meant to finish what I abandoned." Judah looked at Esther. "You don't have to stay," he whispered, "but someone does." The sky cracked open, not with thunder, with howling, a dozen voices, maybe more. From the woods, from the graves, from every place the pact had touched, and the glyph beneath her feet burst into light. Esther closed her eyes. She thought of her parents, of the stories, of the guilt she had worn like a second skin since childhood, and then she let go. Her hands shifted first, bones popping, skin stretching, her arms lengthened, her feet tore through the earth. Judah stepped away, not in fear, in reverence. Esther was becoming the keeper, not in name, in flesh. She dropped to all fours, her jaw cracked open, a low guttural growl poured from her throat, not pain, not rage, something else, completion. And in that moment, the mural exploded in light. Every branch bloomed, every wolf howled. The pact had been remade, through her. When it ended, the clearing was silent again. Micah lay curled beside the base of the pine. Human, weeping, the stray was gone, returned to whatever realm rejected keepers. And Judah. He walked into the woods, not a child, not a ghost, but something whole. Esther stood, new bones beneath her skin, new eyes behind her gaze. She would never be human again. Not completely, but the curse was broken, or at least, sleeping. And for now, that was enough. Esther, silhouetted by dawn light, golden fur streaked with ash, her breath fogs in the cold morning air. Behind her, the woods shimmer faintly, every tree etched with a new sigil. One word beneath them all. Kept. What is the cost of peace when the blood still remembers war? One howl, one heartbeat, one last chance. Subscribe to see if the mark ever truly fades. Some stories end with a scream, others with silence, but in Silver Pines, endings always echo, not loud, not right away, but eventually. Esther Kroll walked the old mountain road barefoot, no longer bleeding, no longer afraid. The dawn was cold on her shoulders, but her skin didn't flinch. She wasn't what she'd been, not human, not beast, something in between. Kind of creature the woods accept. Behind her, the old house burned low, its timbers collapsing inward with gentle groans. The mural had gone last, splintering, not from flame, but from completion. Its roots had stretched too far. Now, with the pact sealed, it had no more stories to hold. The forest was quiet, not peaceful, just holding its breath. Judah was gone. No footprints, no scent. Only the faintest claw marks on a tree near the clearing, a child's height, curved gently inward. Not a warning, a farewell. Micah survived. He wouldn't remember it all. The transformation had burned through him like fever, leaving gaps. But he'd remember enough to carry guilt and gratitude. He'd offered himself to the curse. The woods had returned him, changed, but whole. Esther found herself back at the edge of town by mid-morning. Nobody noticed her arrival. Not the postman who passed her, humming. Not the old widow sweeping her porch. Just another traveler, barefoot and weathered, wandering the long roads of the pines. But the dogs noticed. They stopped barking as she passed, and the birds went silent. Only one sound remained, a single click from a shutter high above a window. Someone watching. The woods always leave one watcher back home, if it could still be called that. Esther opened the drawer beside her childhood bed. Inside, a tape recorder. The kind her grandmother once used to archive dreams. She pressed record, spoke slowly, calmly. If you're hearing this, pact has passed. The child is free, but the forest doesn't forget. It waits, it watches. And sometimes, it sends one back. If you hear the howl, don't run, listen, you might be next. She clicked it off, labeled the tape. The pact keeper slid it back in the drawer and closed it. Later that evening, a fog returned. Thinner this time, almost hesitant, and through it, something moved at the tree line. Not close, not threatening, just present, a pair of faint golden eyes, watching, not Judah, not a threat, a reminder, the pact was kept. But the bloodline endures. Esther, walking a dirt road at dusk, her back to the camera. A full moon rising behind pine trees, barefoot, a long shadow. Behind her, shaped like a wolf, the last line etched in bark, the blood remembers. So will you, if the howl still echoes in your ears. Like, share, and subscribe. Because next time, it might not be just a story, it might be your bloodline. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our Ultimate Werewolf Horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them, and trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.